ArTechník Podcast, number 20 for Sunday, August 5th, 2012.
What?
You are. You are very bassy right now.
Am I?
No, it's good. I like it.
All right.
Sing something by Barry White.
Sultry tones.
You're my first, my last,
My...
my everything.
Oh, my headphones have a short.
Oh, I've gotten to a very comfortable place on this podcast if I'm willing to sing.
Do you hear a baby?
I hear.
That's Tina. Just
It sounded like a little toddler talking.
Tino the cat,
Well,
baby.
he is still pretty young.
he is.
Yeah. Oh. Did you have a request, Jeff?
Once, twice, three times a lady. Well, let's hear that one.
Once. Twice. Three times a kitty.
Okay, so this is our first over-the-internet podcast.
Off to a roaring start.
Oh, yeah, that was recording. Eh.
Yeah. Well, I can... Yeah. Welcome to the Meowcast.
Yeah. Well, this is nice. This whole setup has saved us, 4 hours of driving round trip?
And like $30 of gas.
$30 of gas.
This
is
is
the
a very
environment.
green podcast
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. We are doing good left and right.
We should apply for a grant
Ooh.
since we're, green.
Who's our resident grant writer? We're all wearing green too. No one can see this, but we're all wearing
We
green.
are wearing green. This is our green podcast.
Yay.
Hooray!
Which is interesting because today we had a challenge. And today's challenge was, for our 20th episode, can we do a show about art and technology where the technology portion does not involve computers? Because I thought we were pretty computer heavy the last couple of shows, and let's see if we can talk about tech without talking computer.
Now, in fairness, computers are a big challenge for me. So it was.
You mean using an operating?
Yes.
So Adam had the advantage this week, is what he's saying.
I hope so.
Is there like a scoreboard?
Only the one in your head.
This is another thing that shouldn't be mentioned because it's a visual thing about the podcast setup, but because of the way your camera is aimed, there's a division right between you where the wall is, and it looks like you are actually a split screen yourself.
Oh, yeah, I see it
and that
now.
there's three images.
I'll take a screenshot.
I look like I'm broadcasting. Oh, I look like I'm in Jeff's living room, and you look like you're in the dining room.
To be fair, every room in my house is the dining room.
Oh.
Yeah.
Cool. So alone.
Okay, so
Yeah, talk, Aaron.
non-computer technology.
What do you have?
Shall I start?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. I won't say there are no computers in this process at all, but it's not about the computer that I want to talk about. Have any of you seen a video of a bullet slow motion going through anything? Like,
Yes.
there's the famous
Yes.
one of an Apple from, I think, 64, where they first developed, like, slow motion video technology.
I watch a lot of Mythbusters.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So you've seen a slow motion bullet going through all sorts of things. They have just announced a abstract and discovery announcement at MIT about femto photography, which
I thought
is
you were
one
going to say
trillion-
femputer.
No, femto photography, which is actually video at 1 trillion frames per second. 1 trillion frames per second. If you were to watch a bullet cross the screen at 1 trillion frames per second, it would take a year to watch it frame by frame.
Wow.
This technology is so fast that it can track the movement of light.
Wow.
What?
He
It
said
can
he said it
track-
can track the movement of light, Jeff.
I heard him.
Took a while to get all the way down here to Columbus.
Sound travels
Message,
slower,
yeah.
remember, especially over
Right.
the internet. But the sound of your cat does not.
So
Tino's
one,
always a guest on the show.
Yeah.
1 trillion frames per second.
Right. Yeah. Wow.
Now, right now, this is definitely much heavier on the technological side than the artistic side, as they've just sort of figured out how to make it all happen. But I could imagine a future where there is an artistic implementation of this.
Like the fourth Matrix movie?
Bite your tongue. May that never happen.
Right? Yeah. Huh.
So basically, they set up this experiment where they fired a millimeter or micrometer. Let me double check my notes.
Is that cat okay?
I'm gonna let the cat
I'm
out.
worried
Y'all talk
about him.
photo technology. I'll be right back.
Yeah. Photo technology.
Now we're alone.
We're not alone. All
We
of our
have the
listeners
whole
are
internet
here.
with it.
Yeah.
All three.
Well, That's
Topher.
embarrassing.
Sometimes Joe and Helen.
Yay.
And Brenda and everyone else. We failed at continuing the banter while you were away. Your turn.
All right, so they fire what they call a bullet of light, which is a millimeter length of laser, into a soda bottle full of water on its side. And so you can see each movement of the light as it enters the bottle, reflects all the way up its length, gets captured in the bottle cap, and is bounced back at a viewable speed. Now, what this is that can be useful for is you can actually now take images of something around a corner by capturing the reflected light off, like not over a mirror, like you can hit a solid wall surface and see around a wall. So as this technology advances and becomes portable,
It will be used to kill people.
it could be used to kill people, or it could be used to save people who are like having to enter a burning fire environment, or perhaps an environment with a hostile already inside, and allowing the officers or military personnel to move in and on a safer fashion.
So, like when it comes time to take Adam down after he finally snaps.
Oh, I don't think anything can stop him, even femto photography.
It's true. My mustache makes me stronger than human men.
I knew it.
It can be used for non-invasive colonoscopy.
Hooray!
Colonoscopy.
Which I know we've all been just dying eagerly to have somebody create that system.
The 30s.
But at the same time, even these very minimal scientific experiments and visualizations of the technology are already quite beautiful. And so I can really see it easily becoming a artistic tool, not in the immediate future, but as this technology continues.
Neat. I think we're closer to predator technology, like being
Yeah.
able to turn invisible and stuff.
Cloaking ourselves.
Yeah. It's weird because Adam's mustache also moves like the little predator's mouth things.
Yeah. I'm watching myself now.
sound. I can hear it.
But that's interesting.
Sound of Adam's mustache.
So, making people invisible, right?
That's what I was.
That's
talking
what I
about.
heard. I mean, that's what I heard with, yeah.
But I guess we weren't actually talking about bending line. We were just talking about being able to photograph
capturing the
I
reflections
would like to
of it.
see. I think they've already photographed this once, but I bet now they can do it better. When you turn a light on in a room, and watching the room fill with light. Like I've seen a photo or video or something like that somewhere, but now they must be able to do it better.
Well, here's the thing. Right now, the technology is not a camera that captures 1 trillion frames per second. It is a scanner system using a camera that takes 0.5 trillion frames per second. They've only made it that far. But they have multiple cameras scanning a one-dimensional image, basically. It can get a very wide width, but only like one laser beam high. And so it slowly takes images all the way down whatever you're trying to capture. Well, not slowly. I mean, it's still talking picoseconds here, but and then it compiles all the information from multiple images. So they shoot the little millimeter bullet of light through the bottle millions of times, and they capture all of that information and put it back together into an image that is trillions of frames per second.
Wow. Speaking of photography, mine kind of relates to photography as well, actually.
All right, well, why don't you jump off from here?
Well, I have just learned what chimping is.
What is chimping, Jeff?
Not what you might think, Adam.
Darn.
Or hoped. Chimping is a thing in photography that cropped up around digital photography. And the reason I got into this is I was researching reasons that people still use film, because I was thinking about the Batman movie that we just saw. And that Nolan shoots on film. And I was looking to research why people shoot on film in a video context, but ended up going down this whole rabbit hole of still photography and wedding photography and street photography and things like that. And in that, talking about the benefits of shooting on film versus shooting on digital, they said you can't chimp on film. And I kept seeing that come up over and over. You can't chimp, there's no chimping. And I'm like, what the hell is chimping? So I finally find an explanation of chimping, and it's when you take a picture with a digital camera and you immediately look down, see the image you just took, and point to someone else to show it to them and go, ooh, 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 ooh.
That was a really long trip to the well to come back with that.
Ooh, 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 ooh. Caesar? Ooh, ooh, ooh. No.
Oi.
But I thought it was cool. They were talking about there's lots of practical reasons that I sort of saw, but the artistic benefits where they're saying you have to be, since you can't chimp and you can't look at your pictures right away, you are more in the moment when you're taking the photos because you can't review them. And when you're more in the moment, you're less likely to miss opportunities. And because you're shooting on film and, you only have so much film that you can shoot on, in addition to not missing opportunities, you get better at your instincts get better at knowing the right moment to click the shutter. And you end up taking, just often better photos as far as the emotional moments of them. And I thought that was kind of cool. And there's some other technical reasons about film in a minute, but I thought we'd talk about that.
Yeah. I do like that sense of, it makes you more present in what you're doing, and you got to be careful. You got to think ahead. Yeah. I appreciate that. It's very zen.
They also said chimping puts a lot of pressure on you. You look at the LCD and you say, oh, all these 500 photos that I'm taking on the street should all be great photographs because of digital. I can just, push the button and take lots and lots of photos. And they say that, that's not true. More is sometimes just more. And also people will, when they're chimping, they'll look at a photo and then they'll say, oh, that one's no good, and they'll delete it. And you never know sometimes till you get back and review your photos on a proper larger screen or printout or whatever, that you can tell you might have accidentally deleted what was really a great photo. And I've had that experience sometimes where I never delete them, but I've had ones that I've thought don't look good on the screen, and then I get them home and I open them up and I'm like, oh, I'm glad I didn't just delete it, you know.
Sure.
Well, I know I have friends and family that have big fancy digital SLR cameras, and they really do. They take dozens of pictures at a time because they can and figure that one of them will be good, and go back through and filter it. But it becomes that you're at an event with this camera instead of with your friend or family member, and every time you're trying to do something, there's this giant lens in your face, and it's disruptive. And, you know, I always feel a little bit more self-conscious when the camera is pointed at me than when it's not, obviously. And to have the people who are taking hundreds of photos at events rather than, oh, you know, there's that thing that's happening. Let me grab my camera.
Oh, bless you.
And sneeze.
Yeah.
Curse you. Oh, wait, Adam can bless you because we decided that he could be our
good.
God.
But yeah, I understand what you're talking about. I think I would say we experienced some of that when the documentary,
Yes.
the Springer stuff that we were
agree.
doing recently.
Oh, I do want to hear about this. I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen the resulting video, and it's up on the Polar Studios website and everything, but I want to hear about sort of the process. But finish your thought now.
Yeah, I think it's we kind of ran into the same thing as we were trying to capture moments within the academy. The very first day that we were there, Ron, speaking to the 150 kids that were there, 200 kids that were there for that 2-week session.
Right.
Went ahead and gave them a heads up that we were going to be in the room. However, every time we would enter a new space, there was always that moment of acclimation that all the kids became hyper aware of this camera in the room. And so therefore defeated the whole purpose of what we were there trying to do, which was to try and capture these natural moments within the academy day and what it's like.
Yeah, I it's interesting because on the other end of it, like getting more footage, it was great that we were able to capture so many moments. But as I've shot more and more, I shoot less now that I've shot for longer periods of time, because we have, I mean, like a day of footage or something like that. We have a ridiculous amount. It was a 5-minute final product, and I have 9 Blu-ray discs at 25 gigs apiece full of video. Right? That is
Right.
not in the project. Now, there's a longer project to be had there, but I also sometimes I will stop shooting when my gut kicks in and I go, I've got enough. Now, it's great that I had Adam there because he kept saying, you know, we should get this and we should get this, and ended up having more things of quality to choose from, but I also ended up just having more things of more to choose from. And I find that sometimes that was disruptive to, I think, some of the students. Like, we went into the first hour class of a new session and we shot a little bit of that, but we weren't in the room very long because I think both of our instincts kicked in. We said, okay, we've got something visual here, enough to sort of tell the story, and we should get the hell out of their classroom so that Helen and Joseph can teach.
So they can go back to doing the unobserved work where they're actually getting something out of it rather than the video is getting something out of it.
Right.
Yes. And even if they were doing a very interesting activity, if it visually looked the same as something else I already had, I was quick to be like, okay, let's move on, because without a lot of this video was without sound, because there was interviews going over shots of lively classroom footage, and I'm thinking, well, if without the sound to differentiate, you're not going to know what it is. So let's get out of here.
Yeah, I did a photo shoot recently for archive photos for a show at one point where we weren't taking necessarily photos of big costume changes or different casts. And if you're watching the show, the two moments we photographed were vastly different. But in a still photograph, I was sitting there going, this is going to look exactly the same from a slightly different angle, and it's not going to archive the mood of the show we were doing at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, I was going to backtrack for a second and answer your question about what the heck the project is we were talking about. I just realized some people may not know. Jeff was approached by the Springer to do a 5 to 7 minute long video for a state gala, a state dinner that was being held to raise awareness for money for the new Dorothy McClure Theater that's being built, Children's Theater at the Springer, as well as Hal Holbrook was in town, and he was sort of the keynote, and honoring Paul Pierce, who is about to start his 25th season at the Springer Opera House. And so they wanted a 5-minute sort of piece just to kind of give an overview of the impact the Academy has on the students, and specifically drawing on those that have graduated the program or are about to graduate the program, and what they're going to do with their life. Because the goal of the Academy isn't necessarily to create more actors and more theater practitioners, but it's to create better people that are capable of handling the challenges that the world has to throw at them. So we had, people studying languages, people in the nursing field, people that are working as aides and assistants to congressmen. So yeah, it's just it was a wide variety of people it pulled from, and it was a good project, and it was received really well.
I guess we should throw a link up on the ArTechník site.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Although I think most people we'll throw a link up. Yes.
We'll throw a link up.
Yes. Yes, we will. There was something else about chimping that related to this. I have to look at my notes again, though.
Oh, you have to look down at your monitor.
Hey.
Uh-huh. I'm just saying.
No, it was the topics were computer free, not the tools.
No, I'm just, you're chimping right now.
I am chimping.
Look at this article. This is the Animal Noise Podcast. Kitties,
So
monkeys.
is Predator stopped by at one point,
Uh-huh.
which was possibly one of Jeff's best impressions to date.
Ooh.
That's because I am the predator.
What?
Yeah, that's why I'm growing my hair out.
Oh, I see.
Going back to actually some of the technical reasons that people prefer film, the biggest thing I could find outside of artistic, personal preference, whatever, that I think might even relate to Christopher Nolan, but I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
Is you've got a larger dynamic range, so you can get more detail in darker shapes. And you just have a bigger range, darker darks and brighter brights, like a good laundry detergent. And I think this could relate to, besides that Nolan just has a personal preference for it, but I think it could relate to Batman because you're looking at a character dressed in all shades of black that has black
That tends to appear at night in the shadows.
Appear at night in the shadows, yeah, exactly. And now a lot of times in film they will light these things where it's a night shot, but it is bright as day. And then you just take down your ISO or whatever, or in post you process it to look like night. So I'm sure it's really not an issue at all. However, I remember I could always see a great amount of detail in the costume, even, and I don't know, maybe that had something to do with it, and maybe it didn't. Maybe I wouldn't know the difference, but I did find over and over and over, photographers kept saying you have a higher dynamic range in film than you do in digital, and they started talking. It was the first time that I had ever heard of visual clipping. Like if you think of an audio file, if it's too loud, and the sound waves clip
I
out.
wouldn't know anything about an audio file being too loud.
And the same thing can happen in light in film. I'm learning where information is lost and clipped out, whereas in actual film you can get more of that information in there. If that makes sense, maybe it does.
It makes sense in the abstract, but it's curious that a chemical reaction can capture that much more detail than the digital recording method. In that you would think maybe you could just expand the digital storage system in some way to accommodate that.
I think it might come down to the actual sensor that hits
Yeah.
where the light actually hits. And it's, I guess, and they're also talking about longevity of equipment. They say film cameras last forever because they're not upgraded as frequently as digital consumer cameras. Like, you buy a film camera and the thing just goes forever because it's all mechanical.
Right.
There's
And
not
if
a
you take
processor
care
to
of
be
it,
had.
so the digital equipment breaks down, or it's just obsolete and you want the shiny new one.
They're saying digital equipment fails more.
Sure, I can believe that.
Yeah.
That happen. Yeah.
I think it's interesting then that the same principle behind the machinery breaking down, like the actual technology needing to be replaced every 5 years or whatever it is, kind of transfers over to the whole chimping mentality that you talked about, that, you can take the picture, quickly look down and decide if you want to throw it away or keep it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a weird sort of parallel.
Disposability.
Yes.
Yeah, of both the hardware and the art.
Buzzing.
That was the other thing. Oh, there's a great thing I read where they said a damaged negative looks like a damaged negative. A damaged file looks like nothing.
That was cool.
You can still create art with a damaged negative.
In
Yeah.
fact, one could argue it's more arty when it's damaged.
Ooh.
Could be.
Ooh.
They also
The
mentioned
wabi-sabi.
white hot pixels. So like if you have one pixel on a sensor, like sometimes you ever have a screen go out you have a pixel in your monitor go out or something, and there's this bright green, pixel in the middle of everything. The same thing will happen to sensors. I had that happen to a camera once, where every picture I took had this bright green pixel blaring out at it, and that won't happen with a film camera. Aaron is distracting me over video chat by playing with the dynamic light range available on his webcam.
Ugh.
Don't J.J. Abrams lens flare us.
Boy. Wow.
I'm done chimping.
You're done chimping?
Well, this had a little too much computer to be part of one of my main articles, but since we're here, I want to say that right now, if you are a digital photographer or a digital artist, they are taking submissions for a project called Art in the Air, which is a skyscraper in
Turkmenistan.
Philadelphia.
Oh.
That has digital screens around the top of it that are normally used for advertising and marketing and things.
Oh.
But they are taking digital selections and displaying submitted artwork on these giant skyscraper-sized display screens. And if you are interested in submitting to Art in the Air, you can send your image and information to artintheair@sciencecenter.org. And good luck to you.
Send them film negatives. See what they do.
Have a scanner. Well,
Your turn, mustache.
all right. I'm going to say I struggled with this one. Struggled on an angle, of an article to bring. So I found a bunch of different things, and my brain, I think, really wants them to kind of all be connected. I don't know if they are, but I'm going to throw them out there, and I will let you connect the dots. Okay.
Deal.
So the first thing that I came across was Patton Oswalt, comedian, was the keynote speaker at the Just for Laughs, the big Montreal convention they have every year. And so he delivered his keynote. This was recently, within the last month or so. He delivered his keynote in the form of 2 letters. And the first letter was written to comedians in 2012, and the second letter was written to address, as he referred to them, the gatekeepers, or the producers and people that produce the content for movies and TV shows and stuff like that. But the interesting one was, to me, was the one that he wrote to comedians. And he was talking about how when he started out as a comedian, I think back in 1988, there was sort of this predestined trajectory for all comedians. The idea was you worked your set, you worked up your 5 minutes, you typically worked clean, and you got on Carson. You did your 5 minutes on Carson. You were successful. You were invited over to the couch. Johnny Carson, The Tonight Show, for those that don't know what I'm talking about. You were invited over to the couch, and then you were made, basically. Then you got your sitcom offers, and you got your HBO specials and all this stuff. And, you think back, and typically that's how people like Seinfeld and Ellen, and they started out. They had that sort of trajectory. However, Patton Oswalt points out it all changed once Johnny Carson retired. He said he was surrounded by all these comedians that he said were very good, top of their game, but they suddenly had no idea how to be successful anymore, because the way that had been in place for the last, I guess, maybe 15, 20 years was gone. And he said he saw a lot of good comedians just kind of disappear after that point. And the phrase that he said, the way they responded was, they decided to quit, basically. They decided to give up. Yeah. And so then he goes on to make the point of how now that the rules have changed, with YouTube and Twitter and blogs and everything else, there's no excuse really anymore. It's all homegrown. It's about creating your niche, going back to what we talked about on that very first podcast. And it's no longer, let's see, there was something else he talked about how, in the last 10 years, he was one of the co-stars on King of Queens, and he voiced the lead character in Ratatouille, and he refers to all of those moments as lucky, being given. He was given those things, but now coming back to YouTube videos and all that, the content, you no longer have to rely on that luck. You no longer have to rely on being given these sitcom opportunities and these movie opportunities. You can go out there and make it on your own. And, I think you have to maybe step back and, define success in a slightly different way than what has traditionally been thought of as successful. But if it's sustainable and you've got an audience and you're producing content and you're happy, I would consider that success. And so that's basically what his philosophy was in that letter in a nutshell, that you can be successful as an artist now, and it is completely dependent on what you put into it.
Which seems to be the whole philosophy that we run off of.
Uh-huh.
I would consider that anyone listens to this show a success, and that as many people that do listen, I think that's a success, and that we enjoy doing it, and that we're not starving while doing it. I would consider all of those things a success. We were able to, just now with like the thing we just did for Springer, produce a film, have to do some art, be paid for it, and be happy. And it's sort of, we're like the new, I think there's a working class film actor that's always been around, but now has a chance to be, or working class filmmaker that has a chance to be more prevalent now. And I love it. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Your turn, Gottlieb.
No, I love the idea that we are able to create the medium as well as the material, to create our own program and our own opportunity, which between us we've done from education to theater to video to comics to podcasting. And, I always had a sense, or maybe not always, but relatively recently had a sense that, I haven't failed until I just stop. As long as I'm muddling through and trying something, the next plan, I have yet to have failed. and I don't seem to have any intent to stop, so I haven't felt like I'm in danger of failing.
Speaking of, may I recommend watching Conan O'Brien Can't Stop on Netflix? It's a documentary. It's pretty darn good.
Yeah. He's
All
been
right.
trying to get me to watch it for, what, a month? 2 months now?
A month, 2 months.
A month?
Watch it or else. Does Predator count
All
under
right.
animal noises?
Sure. Sure. Non-human noises.
So that's the first link in the chain.
Sure. And so the next link is there was a New York Times article about this nonprofit grant money-giving machine, lose my words, money-giving machine for artists, and it's called United States Artist. And it was created back in 2005, and they have a system set up where you can propose projects, as well as you can also be granted fellowships for particular fields of study. But their project area is set up very much kind of like Kickstarters and Indiegogo and a lot of those sort of grassroots money-making sites are. The only difference is they said this group, United States Artists, is much more proactive about working with you and helping you, define maybe better goals or connecting you specifically with other artists that are in the same field that may be able to help you. And so it kind of goes that extra step, as well as the organization itself is given a certain amount of money that they also do matching grants. So I think they said currently in their project section, I think 75% of all projects that are proposed meet their funding.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
Because they do such a good job of working with them. And then they have a more advanced sort of thing with the fellowship. And this New York Times article was pointing out why their use of fellowship grants.
Sorry.
The donuts are ready. Why these fellowship are so much more important, because how they said typically there aren't a lot of arts organizations out there that grant them anymore. They were quite prolific in the 1980s, but as the NEA and other organizations began to get cut back more and more, those were the first things to go, individual artist grants. And now typically they're awarded more towards organizations, bigger than the individual. But yeah, they're a really cool organization. I've been checking them out, their website, and I think we should post a link for any artist that's out there that listens to our podcast. You should go check this place out. It's called United States Artists. So yeah.
I love the idea of a way to connect with other artists.
Yeah, that was the biggest selling point, or the biggest thing that made it stand out from all of those other fundraising sites.
I feel like I was talking to Adam about this the other day, that I think I want Polar Studios to do essentially. I was talking to Ben about this. I don't think I've got a chance. Maybe I did talk to you about this. Anyway,
say it.
I'm talking to you now.
Yeah.
A short sort of introduction, education, whatever video about who we are and that we're out there, and at the end of it, sort of a call to action about how we really want to connect with other artists, who are doing what we're doing, or who are starting out, or who are trying to figure it out. Because I'm interested in what we're doing, but I feel like there's so many other people out there that I want to know them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the Muppet philosophy.
What's
you know?
that?
Well, I don't remember exactly, but the idea is, Kermit, as the ringleader, he's got this dream, and dream is all right on your own, but the dream gets better the more people you share it with, the more dogs and chickens and pigs
Bears and cows and things.
Yeah, and the more people you share it with, the better the dream gets.
It's show.
It's time. Yeah. But and so that article, and where does the money come from for artists, was sort of that next part for me. Sort of the artist as a commodity, the actor as a commodity, and and where all the money comes from, because it
is a rough place right now. I mean,
Yeah.
the Kickstarter and Indiegogo thing is great, but it's getting to the point where like you log on to anything, your email, your Facebook, Twitter, and 9 of your 10 friends have a Kickstarter campaign going, and everybody wants to fund the thing they want to fund, which is great, and it's nice that they have the opportunity, but as much as I want to encourage and support everyone that comes along my path, the donor fatigue is already starting to set in, and it's like 2 years old, the whole Kickstarter process. And it's hard to say, to not give, like if any of my friends were to walk up to me and be like, "Hey, can I borrow $20?" I'd be like, "Sure, here you go," and I would send them on their way. That was a really dangerous thing to say out on the air, wasn't
on
it?
the podcast.
Yeah.
Wow. You're going to be broke real soon. Wow.
But it's true. I'm not gonna at that level, that money. If my friend needs that money, I'm gonna try and find it for them. And the same sentiment happens when I get the Kickstarter request or the Indiegogo or whatever. I'm like, well, yeah, I've got a little bit I can share along the path, and I've given out to a lot of great projects that I'm really excited are going on out there. But at the same time, it's like announcing on a podcast that you're willing to give friends $20.
By the way, we have a donate button.
Fine, I will donate $20 to the podcast.
That was my goal the whole time, just to get
We
Aaron
met our goal
to
for the
donate.
month. Yay!
So this is Christmas. For less than
But,
the price of a cup of coffee.
how do you make art something that people want to pay for? How do you make
Sure.
the supply and the demand change enough that basic economics kick in rather than charity economics kick in? And that's the biggest thing that I'm struggling with as an artist and a business person right now. It's like people globally don't have as much of an interest in going to see theater and going to see artistic installations as they do other things. You go out to a restaurant or a bar and you get a $25, $50 tab sitting around a bar and having a few drinks, but you ask somebody for a $20 ticket to a theater, and they balk at it immediately.
God, I even remember back in college where, students would balk constantly at, you could get a $10 ticket at the Springer or sometimes cheaper elsewhere. And everybody would kind of just drop their jaw and like, you want me to pay for this? And these were theater students. These were people that you were going to, theoretically base their whole life on making money off of this. And they were just indignant at the fact that they would have to pay money to watch theater.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's vote with your dollar.
Sure.
Do you want it to exist or not? It makes me think about our own projects going forward, and not to keep bringing it back to us, but
It's what we know, so it's what we talk about.
It's
Podcast.
It's an experience. The weekly, the web series that we're doing that was crowdfunded and that we're still in the middle of producing, we did in an interesting way that I think going forward we're going to do differently because of the economics and donor fatigue that you were talking about. We up front said, we're going to produce this series. Can you help us out? And, we raised about, a little over $800, which was not enough to cover the cost, but enough to help significantly. And so, we're going and we're producing it and all of that. And after that project is over, I think the next time we do one, the way I'm considering doing it is the studio will go ahead, say for a new project, and shoot the pilot. And then use the pilot as, say, an Indiegogo or a Kickstarter that, if successfully funded, and only if successfully funded, then does the rest of the episodes in the series get produced. Otherwise, and the pilot's out there for free, but it's like if you'd like for the season to happen, then we need to be able to raise this much money so that we can actually cover the cost of it. And if not, then it's treated like a true pilot. We tried it, and the market didn't want it, and we move on.
Okay.
But just globally, this idea of how do you make it a wanted commodity? We know as people in the field the benefits to both education and humanity that any of the art fields contribute, but there isn't a really great way. It's trying to sell, eat your vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we know that these are very, fun shows and interesting things and tasty, delicious vegetables, but you're selling it to a crowd that has learned to think of it as uninteresting and uncreative.
But Aaron, how can you eat your pudding without having any meat?
You can't. But that's my point. Are we the pudding or are we the meat?
I want to be the pudding.
I want to be the meat.
But
Yes.
globally, it
He's
seems
trying to make a
that
point.
in that strange phrase, we act as the meat. We're the punitive thing you have to do to have actors who go off to Hollywood. You have to have theater available to get Batman movies.
Right.
But you don't want people. The general population doesn't seem to want to go to the theater. They only want to see the Batman movies. So what do? Do we continue to do it despite them, or do we find a way to make it
Right.
market?
Well, it's an argument why a lot of, again, going back to the NEA and a lot of their funding being cut, it kind of came down to, or at least one of the big arguments were, well, if people aren't paying money to support this, and we're a capitalist society, then let the free market dictate whether this should survive or not. And we should stop propping it up and funding it. If people want it, then they'll go out there and pay for it, and if they don't, then it'll die. But I think that's terrible. There's all these arguments and studies that came out. They were circulating on Facebook like a year or two ago about the economic impact of the arts on a community and what that does for like your downtown life and restaurants and hotels and blah 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 and all this stuff. But I think the biggest selling point and the thing that, and it's so hard to get across to people, is the intrinsic need for these things, for plays and for new music and for art installations and all these things, that we need these things. I think otherwise why are we advancing? Why are we moving forward if we lose I guess soul, spirit, let's say spirit, that we lose a little bit of our human spirit along the way?
It's a lot like what the stuff that Hal Holbrook was talking about at the gala that was
Yeah.
really inspiring as an artist. And maybe, I don't know if I can play any of that audio or not. I probably can.
Yeah.
If I can tag some of that audio onto the end of this podcast, I will. That'd be fun. Special guest.
Yeah.
But he said some really inspiring stuff.
Yeah.
But what is the point of doing the most inspiring, creative piece of new music to an empty building, to an empty house, to the three people who are going to be there no matter what you're playing?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think once the work is produced, I don't think it necessitates. That's a word, right?
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessary that you have to have that full house anymore. I think as long as the new work is being created, and I guess this is talking more about music and other things like that, not necessarily a live theater experience.
Sure, go ahead.
But as long as the new work is being produced and it gets out there, it will find the people who need it.
Okay.
Yeah.
If it's got a recorded, persistent presence.
Yeah.
What
So-
if you're talking about something ephemeral?
Right. That's a lot of the reasons I think people don't buy tickets to theater is I don't, there's nothing I get to keep out of it other than the memories. And unfortunately, we don't value that. And I don't know why we don't. I mean, I kind of get it. But for a lot of people, that's the thing. There's no takeaway.
And that's the weird thing about our culture. There are countless studies that have been coming out the last 2 years about where true happiness lies. And they're saying it's not in objects. It's not in accumulated wealth. It's not in all these things. They say the things that make people truly happy are the experiences. Going out there and, 3 friends hop in a car and drive to Atlanta one night, or that great party that you threw in college, or going to see a play. It's the experiences you remember. And I know all 3 of us could probably name at least 2 instances where we were that we can recall a specific production because of the way it affected us. Some thought that we left with, an emotion that was brought up in us by watching the performance. But it's such a hard thing to sell to people. I think because, all right, and then coming down to it, I think because we're such a materialistic society. There.
All right. So,
Truth bomb.
what do we as artists do to convey that information out there to the world?
Okay.
I don't know, but I didn't want to lose this. I thought it was interesting that we keep talking about happiness, and art in that regard. But a thing that Hal Holbrook said that really hit me was sometimes it's our job to make people a little nervous, a little uncomfortable about things. If it's our job to disquiet people, that's an interesting kind of responsibility in a way. It's like, you're going to come here, and unfortunately, I'm going to bother you, but you need to be bothered about this a little bit.
That's an even harder sell. I can almost see a marketing strategy for come to the theater. It will be the thing you remember happily till your deathbed. How do you sell the commercial element of come here and have us disrupt your worldview? Have us come here and make you uncomfortable and squirm in your seat and regret everything you've done.
Yeah. Every choice you've ever made, we're going to make you question it in the next 2 hours. I don't know, because I don't know. I mean, I think you put it out there, and I think the people that are challenged by it and are transformed by it or accept that challenge, whatever you say, they become your acolytes out into the world, and they spread that message. And I think, I think as long as you're doing, I'm losing my train of thought. I think as long as you're doing stuff that's challenging, I think, and I trust people will come.
All right.
Enough to sustain. Again, not to define yourself by success of our materialistic world.
You can't continue to.
Yeah.
You have a Roddenberry-esque faith in humanity sometimes, and I enjoy that.
I do, and then sometimes I'm at home alone, and it's just terrible. Like, it's absolutely terrible. The things that I think about or reflect on, stories that I'm reading in the news, really, is what it is, and stuff like that. But
as you're researching topics for the podcast,
as I am, yeah. I mean, that's really where it comes down to. I'll scan a couple of articles from the New York Times in the arts and leisure section, and then all of a sudden I'm on alternate reading about how we have a corrupt 2-party system, and they're all connected. They're all connected.
As long as you're not on 4chan, please don't hurt us, 4chan.
I would like to say that Jeff's little challenge there was a representation of Jeff Holbrook only, and not Aaron Gottlieb or Adam Montag.
You didn't have to include our last names in that. Thanks.
Dang it.
We're already all pretty searchable. What was that thing they did where they found...
Oh, yeah, there was a story two weeks ago. There was a kid that was working in Burger King that took the lettuce, the little lettuce containers, had all the chopped up lettuce in them, and put them on the floor and stood in them with his shoes on stood in there, and a friend took a picture of it with his phone and with the caption something like, yeah, this is what goes on in Burger King, or yeah, this is what we do to your food, some sort of challenge like that. Well, it was put on, I think, one of the 4chan sites, and the community reacted very negatively, and so took the image and scanned, went in and found the GPS data that's embedded in the images that you take on your phone, and figured out which Burger King it was, contacted the local news and local authorities, and they said it was something like within 2 or 3 hours of the picture being posted, they knew exactly which Burger King it was. They figured out who was on shift and who was standing in that lettuce, and he was fired.
That's awesome. That
Go
gives
internet.
me faith in humanity, actually.
It does, yeah. That's one of those moments where you kind of smile. Yeah.
Yep. Speaking of one of those moments, I think it's about time that we wrap up and do sign-offs.
Yeah, we want to leave enough time
Alrighty.
for Mr. Holbrook at the end.
Oh, that's right.
Not this Mr. Holbrook.
That
but,
was it wasn't confusing at all, but it was funny to pretend it was, because people would look back at me and go, haha, very funny.
Yeah, it was really funny. There was when Jeff was walking around at the reception, I saw one of the wait staff that was replenishing the hors d'oeuvres or anything. She noticed your name tag, and I saw the look of disbelief on her face. She was like, "That's who we're here to see." You just saw the look of incredulity. I mean, it was like
I'm a disappointment.
it was like sticker shock. I just stood there for a moment, just watched her face until finally she figured out you were not Hal Holbrook.
Speaking of, real quick, and then sign-offs. There's a hallway of composite photos, whatever you want to call them, in the Springer called the Hall of Legends. It's artwork that I put together based on photographs of famous people who have been at the Springer. Hal Holbrook was one of them, and it blew my mind when he was first arriving, and he's going through. Someone texted me, says he's going through the Hall of Legends right now, and he's kind of staring at his. And I came down there, and he's like, I didn't do the captions, but there was a spelling error or something like that, or a date error in the captions or whatever. But, he was talking about that, and he was going through kind of admiring all the pictures or whatever. But it was weird to me to see him standing there and then look and see the picture that I made of him there, and I'm in the middle, and I'm like, this is weird. I didn't think you'd see this. Anyway, that's the thing. Time for sign-offs, I suppose.
Hey,
Yes.
I'm Aaron, and I want art to be valued.
I'm Jeff, and I'm a constant disappointment to waitstaff.
I'm Adam, and secretly Gene Roddenberry.
Nice.
You're welcome. And very glad you two are my friends.
Oh,
Yeah. Glad you're my friends.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Hal Holbrook.
I can't tell you how beautiful this is. What you've done here, it's, doesn't mean so much to me, but I'm an actor, so, but we destroy so many things in this country thoughtlessly, just wipe them out, that have to do with who we are, where we came from, what happened here before we were on the scene. And you have kept this, not only kept it, but you put it back in its most beautiful condition. Kept it going, kept life in this place. And, you can't do Mark Twain all these years. I don't just do them, in case you don't know. I don't just perform Mark Twain. I put all the material that I do together. I don't update his material. I never have. That's one of the powers of the show, that you're listening to this man say something we wrote 100 more years ago that sounds like it was in the paper this morning, which tells us something about ourselves. It's much easier to learn the truth from history than it is from CNN, Fox News, or MSNBC. Nobody is twisting it. It's there, on the page, a fact of history. When you study Twain, you look for material to put together for a show, and you don't fool around with it too much, just change words once in a while, adjectives and stuff like that need to be, when you adapt for the stage, it's a little better than literary. If you just stood up here and read the book with all the adjectives in it, it would get boring because the actor is an adjective, so you have some modification you have to do. But the thoughts are right there, and you may not realize that if you're not part of the theater. You may just think actors get up and say lines or, show off or whatever. That's not what we do. It's hard work. Very hard work. You have very difficult hours. You have to exhaust yourself. You can never give up. There's no such thing as giving up. You keep seeking, seeking, seeking. And what you try to do is to reach out to the minds and the hearts of the people. To try to reach into their minds and their hearts. And to make people understand themselves, ourselves, make them feel better in some ways, make them worry about certain things. And that's what it's all about.